Well, hello, and welcome, everybody. A very warm welcome if you are joining us today. Now, my guest today is the incredible Janine Davis, who is joining us as CEO, founder of Strategic Talent Group. So, Janine, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, brilliant. So we're going to dive underneath Janine's journey over the last 6 months. And Janine's very kindly going to be walking you through the changes that she's made in her business. So let's start right at the beginning, Janine. Tell us a little bit about your business and how long you've been established and what you do.
I came from corporate America and I started my business 2 years ago. So it's a fairly young business. I focus on healthcare. So we do telehealth, telemedicine, and outpatient care. And there's only about 3 or 4 roles that we fill pretty consistently. And yeah, and actually, what started the whole thing was me kind of getting burnt out with all the COVID. I was in healthcare administration and just kind of had enough and said, you know what, I've got to figure out something to still feed my spirit, but like get out of the rat race, and feel rewarded for it. So actually, I spend more time with my son now, and I actually ended up doing starting my business to be able to do that and spend time with family, but also still grow and be part of my career and business.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I can remember our first phone call so many months ago now. It only seems like yesterday, and at the same time, you've moved the business forward so much. So tell us a little bit about what was happening for you, specifically in the business, yeah, back then.
Yeah, before I came to you, or
Yeah. Before you came to us, what was
um,
happening? Yeah, what sort of challenges, problems were you facing back then?
yeah. I mean, I will tell you, like if I was to diagnose myself, I think it was the shiny squirrel, shiny bauble syndrome. I don't know if, again, I've only been doing this for a little over 2 years, but even in that short time, I felt like I was trying different things, implementing different things, but not necessarily seeing it to maturity or fruition or enough to really say, like, is this a true indicator of like my ability to get a result, or is this really giving me or not giving me a result, and not dismissing it so quickly. So I think that was my challenge. Like I I was well intended, and I think I knew that these things could get me to where I needed to be, but it's the consistency and the focus, and then evaluating it and how to do that. I just didn't have that skill set. And I also think there was a confidence piece too before I came, because one of the things too that I really was struggling with was it's interestingly, as I tell you, like I tried all these different things, some of the basic things that really shouldn't I've spent the emotional time on. I was like, I mean, I think of in the beginning, just like silly things, like, and for me, it feels silly now when I look back on it, considering like where I've come from, but like what my logo looked like and the things that, like, at the end of the day, like, does it really matter? Does it really shape what I'm doing? So I feel like I was a
Mm.
little bit of a mess like before I came, kind of sloppy with things, but again, I think that's how I was trying to make sense of like this new step in starting my business. And
Yeah.
yeah, lots
I
changed.
Absolutely wonderful. And I think so many of us can lean into that when
Yeah,
we are, particularly when you're on your own, you're a business owner,
yeah,
you're working on your own, you don't have anybody to bounce ideas off, you don't have anybody to give you that external perspective on, how you're working. And there's, you don't really have accountability. There's no real direction. Because I don't care who you are, I think all of us benefit from having, I know,
yeah,
including myself, we all benefit, don't we, from having that third pair of eyes,
agree.
somebody else to
Yeah,
look on it and say what we're doing. And also, you're right, there are so many things that you can be doing. It's knowing, how do I prioritize what is actually going to give me the best return? What should I
agree.
do first? And then you're right, the measurement of that. Like, how do I know that's being successful?
Mhm.
Because when we first start something, and you're right with the shiny squirrelitis, as we call it, which I also have,
Yeah,
when we have that, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. It means
yeah,
we have a high sense of creativity as well.
yes,
And
yes,
when we have that, it means that we like instant results. And so we
Mhm.
try something, and if we're not getting a result fast enough, we think it's what we're trying that's wrong. And so we tend to, okay, I'm going to jump over here and
Exactly.
try something else. And then you're right, you could have 3 or 4 things on the go, and
Yeah.
not one of them is really giving you a return. And then you feel
Mhm.
like everything that you're doing is not working. So it's
Yeah.
going back to, what is it that I actually need to work on, and how do we work that out first of all? So there's a process that needs to happen. What's the one thing that I need to work on, and then how do I really double down on that and measure it, measure the success, and that then gives
Measure.
you
Yeah. That's a
confidence,
key.
doesn't it, for
Yeah.
the next thing. So talk to us, what was the first thing that you implemented into the business?
I think the messaging consistently, I had dabbled a little bit in it, the
Okay.
LinkedIn messaging, but I would tell you that it was definitely more systematic. It was measured. I was looking at it in a more consistent way, talking about it too, bringing it to the sessions, bringing it to my one-on-one coaching sessions, and one just formulating the right message too. Because in the beginning, I tried a bunch of different messages, and that's the other thing. It's okay to have controls and comparing, but I think I had too many messages going, and maybe not enough of looking at one or two scenario, and comparing them to really go like, okay, is this effective, or am I just trying too many things and watering it down, the effectiveness of it? And I would definitely say it was the latter, that I was watering it down. So with you guys though, it was definitely a process. And interestingly enough, the feedback that I got was, the simplest is best. Um, and I could tell when I made adjustments to that, the response rates were going up. So, I'm in a new, like another stage with that again, but that's the evolving part of this messaging. But the good thing is,
Excellent.
once you get it in place, getting those consistent calls, talking with clients, just again, having conversations, it's more predictable for sure. I can definitely tell you and when it's not, you go back in, right? You do a little diagnostic, and you bring your resources in that you guys have, and talking to people about what's working or not working, or why is that changing? What are the factors that are impacting that? And again, I know you guys are very, the mantra, and it does make sense to me, is just the process part of that, and looking at it from a process lens. And um, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I would necessarily embrace that before doing this as much as I have, because I've just seen too many. Again, I think it's like, you tell yourself you do these certain things with your patterns of behavior, and you can be really good at convincing yourself like, oh, it's not this, it's that. But again, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it really is about process.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it goes back to us people with squirrelitis. We don't
Yeah.
necessarily like a process, or like too much structure, because
Yeah.
we like to work with a sense of freedom. And it's being able to do those two things and bring them into play, and
Yeah.
ultimately, get the results. So with that messaging sequence, so for you, this was about building that attraction machine,
Yeah.
and for you, it was about getting clients to come into the door. So that
Correct.
was
Yeah.
increased flow for you of jobs, because you work retained business, don't you, in the
Yeah.
marketplace
Blended. Yeah.
that
Exclusive
you're
arena.
in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so for you, what you wanted was more of those clients. You wanted to attract more of those types of high level positions and roles. And so the sequence that we're talking about here is the attraction machine, whereby, well, how do I go and get that consistent flow? How do I go and get more clients? And actually,
Mhm.
we know that in the world that we're in today, particularly when you work, across the globe, you can't necessarily, it's not always you're in the time zone to be able to get hold of these people. So this is about a consistent way to do an outreach that then
Correct.
enables you to get a client to raise their hand. That's what we're talking about, aren't we? The client actually raises their hand and says, yeah, I'd like to have a conversation with you. And then at that point, you jump on the phone, and you're having a conversation with a qualified lead.
Correct, correct. And it's also like, building the messaging isn't possible unless you really have a lot of clarity around your niche too.
Right.
So that was like another thing. I think I just had to tighten that a little bit, and the consistency around saying like, these are the roles that I fill, these are the people that I want to work with. And what does that criteria look like? I guess that was the pre-step to the messaging.
That's it.
yeah, it definitely made how I was communicating my value a lot clearer too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's interesting what you were saying, going back to the part earlier where you said, maybe I was getting myself unknowingly, we can get ourselves caught up in maybe it's branding or it's
Yeah.
more marketing, or I need to spend more time on my website or whatever it is that we think is the priority, but actually ultimately it goes back to, if we want to make more placements, if we want to get more clients, then we have to take the actions that are those proactive actions, which
Mhm.
actually means we need to go out there and have more conversations. We need to go out there and generate more
Right. Yeah.
clients. But actually you've been doing that in what we call an organic way, rather
Mhm.
than necessarily advertising or any
Yeah.
other method.
Correct.
So
Correct. Yeah.
tell us a little bit about, so you got clear on your niche, you
Mhm.
then got clear on the pain points and the desires of your client. I mean, I'm breaking
Yeah.
it down for people, but obviously there's more to it in terms of what
Of
you're saying
course.
and the
Yeah.
process and the tweaking, and then making sure that using our content team and our writers with us, that you got that absolutely right for your for
Yes.
your
Yeah.
avatar market. But how quick did you start seeing results once you put this into place?
Immediately. I would say within a week to 2 weeks. I mean, it was really um because I will tell you, like I went through a lot of transition before I came to you all in my own personal life and kind of let those things kind of fall by the wayside. So I to be able to implement it and see something quickly, because again, you have that there is a desire to kind of say like, oh, I want to see some sort of return on this.
Mm.
Um, but for me, yeah, I would say within a week to 2 weeks, I had, conversations happening where I was coming in, things were going on my calendar, um, and definitely in my wheelhouse. It's kind of interesting how that happens too, because it's sort of like this piece where you say like, okay, I always say it's like, sort of shutting from the rooftops, like this is what I'm going to do, this is who I am, this is how what I'm going to communicate to the rest of the world. And it's interesting, like when you do that, the messaging is an expression of that too. It's like it kind of all kind of comes together. So yeah, definitely immediate.
And for people listening, because they might think you've got this whole massive team behind you that are doing this process,
Yeah.
what's the workforce behind that?
For my own team or from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
okay.
So
Yeah, so it's evolved. So I do, interestingly enough, I kind of fell into the idea. I originally went into my business thinking, oh, I'm going to hire my staff directly and they're going to be my employees. But I changed that, and I have all outsourced support. But I will tell you that the people that are doing that are um I feel like they're part of my team. We communicate as
yeah,
such. I mean, obviously, there's legalities of things of what you're responsible for with them, but from a day to day, like they are engaged. So I have a recruiter, executive recruiter. I have someone who does my lead generation and my marketing and my messaging. I have a virtual assistant, and I'm in the process of getting an appointment setter in place to kind of bridge some of the booking gaps that maybe sometimes happen. So that's the great thing, right? You start getting all these things and you're trying to spend time closing to get them on the calendar. So I figured this is like a measure for me to get that in place. So, and then
yeah.
of course, I do the discovery, what I call discovery calls. So those client conversations. But again, I don't know what the future may hold. There are things that I'm talking about with my coach around my sales function and seeing how that will evolve.
Yes.
So that this year is kind of for me, a pivotal year in terms of the team and the team design and what I'm doing. So again, that goes back to like, not to get off track with this, but it's like trying not to do too many things at one time.
Mhm.
So I'm saying this like this is a future plan because there's other things that I'm focusing on, but the
Yeah.
team is a very big part of that in terms of the evolution of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. Brilliant. And so, because I think when you first joined us, it was yourself, wasn't it, at that point? And I think you
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
have a lady that worked with you there, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I had one
yeah,
person. Yep.
one person. But what we're talking about here is you can actually put the other people, outsourced or VAs, into
Yeah.
place to support you around those areas. And
Yeah.
then, like you're saying, you're still able to build your business, and you're still being able to work with the clients and do that front facing role, which is where your expertise lies and where you're most in flow. So you can still build the business and put these processes into place and still be increasing the revenue and the profit of the business. Because I know, you mentioned yourself that off the back of this, you've won additional fees, you've won clients, and you've been continuing to see that progress, which is fantastic. Okay, so we've talked about niche, then we talked about the messaging, we've talked about the attraction machine. So now for you, it's moving to that conversion and making sure that that machine then goes into place. And this is where you're talking about then looking at tweaks on your team and how you start ramping that up, if you like, in terms of that. What differences has it made for you in the billing side of things, and both personal and
So for me, I think this is obviously I have a financial goal that I'm looking to meet. The good thing is, so this is the positives, and this is where I feel like, and then I'm going to tell you more about where I think there's more opportunity. The good thing is that there's more consistency around the fees, the jobs that I'm getting. I think, again, there's always this desire of like, this is the goal and I'm trying to get at that. But I will tell you, like, the foundational work that I've done in the last few months is what set me up for the year, like coming in and like getting a fee right away. There's a consistency there, and the consistency with the jobs that I did not have before. Like, I've had months where nothing was happening, or I was sitting on the ability to move these things forward because it was a really hard search or whatever the criteria may be that was causing that. But I will tell you that I'm really excited about this year because it's nothing like starting the new year with a fee. Like, that's a good, it's a good little ego boost. But it's also about I'm saying how to express this, but it's also about, for me, knowing that I've got several jobs that we're working on right away that I know I can see and realize. Like, I'll just tell you, like, I'm a third of the way there with my goal for the quarter. I want to hit 100,000. That's my quarterly goal. And part of that decision came around the fact that my cycles, even in 2 years, my summers tend to be a little slower in decision making for my clients. So I was like, okay, how can I offset that? So I'm not, because my 2 big years are like the first quarter and then my last quarter, which is in the winter. So that's how it came to the number. But I think we're well positioned for that. And that's, again, I expect us to hit that and have those booked by the end of March. That's my, that's the plan. We're on track.
Amazing.
And some tweaks, that happen with that. But again, very different before. I always felt like I had this big number, and it was, lucky if I'll realize that by the end of the year. But it also feels different because I know I'm measuring it in a way that I can go, yeah, this is actually doable, versus just kind of having this ominous number out there like, oh, I really want to get to that. But it's knowing, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take to actually get to that number in a very clear way, which, so monetarily on the right track.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's also, isn't it, that peace of mind and knowing that you've got a team around you. It's not just now all on your shoulders, that you've got to try and do all these parts of the process. Because that's what holds people back from scaling or from moving their business forward, is that they become, there, if you like, that finite energy and time that there's only so much that one person can do, and you just can't. And then you go through these ebbs and flows, don't you? And it's very soul destroying, particularly when at that point you're working so hard, but you're not actually feeling like you're getting anywhere. And the moment that you do, you drop the ball on something else because you can't possibly be doing all of those things. And then, as you say, you then go through that peak and trough sort of experience where things are great, but then they're not so great, and then they're great again, and then they're not so great. So I think, I'm glad to hear that that's totally changed for you. And from a personal perspective, being a mum, moving as you did, we haven't even talked about that, moving across the globe. How have you managed to do all these other things as well? What's it improved for you in your personal life?
Well, it's funny. Like I was talking with a family member the other day because I moved to Italy. I feel like everybody knows the story now, but um, it was a 2-year plan. But I will tell you, interestingly enough, as I'm like in this program and I'm here, I've actually kind of incorporated some of the things. And I will tell you, so I set, and this is kind of from the training and what you guys offer,
Yeah.
just pacing myself around, okay, what am I going to accomplish while I'm here? Like, I hate to say, like, thinking of like, okay, first quarter, second quarter, but I've also figured out there's challenges. It's not just the cross cultural things that I'm dealing with, but I feel like, okay, goal one was get my son enrolled in school, get that settled in. The second was get the day to day that I can be here and all the legalities of that. And then the three is just kind of get to know my community. So again, I don't think I would have looked at it quite in such a systematic way without you guys. Like, it's kind of funny. And I was telling my family member, like, isn't it interesting? Like, when you get clarity about certain things, especially my business, that does spill over to other parts of your life. And
Right.
I think it has made the changes that I'm going through easier, which again, I think um, you don't just compartmentalize the way you approach your business. Like, it really does extend to other pieces. And I think, and in a good way. So for me, again, I feel like I have a little more of a systematic approach to just my everyday life. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm this, like structured. Everything is like, I mean, I obviously have free time, but again, I build that into my business, but I also build it into my personal life and having fun too. So yeah,
Brilliant, brilliant. And that's so important because, but
yeah,
it's a big move because, I think a lot of the time we can hold ourselves back, can't we, from making the big decisions
yeah,
about, actually, I want to move my business forward, but at the same time, I've got a big change happening in my personal life, which is I'm moving countries, I'm moving
yeah,
from the United States to Italy. It's a big thing. And at the
yeah,
same time, a lot of people might have thought, well, maybe I'll let my business take a back foot and
yeah,
I'll just focus on that move. But you were like, no, I know I need to get my
yeah,
business in the right place.
yeah.
And it's amazing how much we can achieve. I always find, we amaze ourselves
Mm.
when we have a plan, like you're saying, we have a bit more structure to it. You can actually get so much more done.
Mhm.
And I do think it makes a difference, doesn't it, when you've got somebody else that's got your back or that okay,
Absolutely.
actually, I'm not, I'm following a process here rather than I've got to create the process. Um,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think, that in itself, so many business owners hold themselves back because they've got great ideas, but where they really need that support is the implementation. And I think that was definitely you, Janine. I mean,
Nice.
your business, yeah, you've got such a great story to go out there and tell, as have, I'm sure, every single person that's listening to this,
Yeah.
conversation here today. They have such a great story to tell, but they're holding themselves back from telling it because it's just a couple of pieces in the cogs that they need some support with, really.
Well, and yeah, and I think the other thing that I really appreciate, I mean, there's so many things I appreciate you guys. That's a whole other conversation in addition to this one. But the piece for me, there's two pieces that like I really have been helpful for me is just continually being reminded, like, you can't just have this like hanging out there, like why and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Um, and when things are difficult, or you have little moments where you're like, oh, like I got to get through this and figure out. One is I'm not doing it alone, which is really, really helpful. And having people to bounce that off of, or like, because it is, you're good. You have moments where you're like, either a self-doubt creeps in or something, but
Right.
it's the awareness and having somebody going like, okay, first of all, you're not alone in that. And two, like, let's think about it from the process standpoint of like, how to address that. And the other piece too is just, again, being reminded the why. So, when I have moments where I'm like, oh gosh, this is like painful. And I'll tell you something like this week that happened. Like I scheduled I'm trying to get this appointment setter, had the person selected, loved it. And then the person just like, oh, I decided I want to take a full time because it was part time. So I'm back at square one. But I think from that experience, so I'm going to tell you this is reality. Like, it isn't always roses, but
Mm,
it is roses in the sense of it happened quickly. It happened right out of the gate, and I was able to shift and adjust. And like, we've got interviews next week. So the important thing is, things don't stop. And I think it's important that you guys communicate in a way that's, I think, very realistic. Nobody's asking you to deny your feelings and emotions and the changes that you go through in your business. And, but the good thing is there are people and there are tools and resources to help you push through those things so you can, realize it's just a little blip in the big picture of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's so different, isn't it? Versus when you're on your own and it's like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah. And you get in your little cycle of the things in your head, right? Like that little the stories you tell yourself, and sometimes that's not always a good place to be.
No, it's not helpful. It's not helpful because the gremlins in our heads are really quite nasty to us, aren't they?
Yes, not always supportive, for sure.
Oh my goodness, great. Okay, so Janine, what would be your passing advice for anyone who is in a similar position to where you were, back 6 months ago? What would be your advice to them? What would you say if they're in that situation to get themselves out?
I think it really, for me, and I think, again, if especially if you're someone who has been stuck, or if you do have the shiny ball syndrome, or if you have moments where there's a little bit of self-doubt about, like, am I making the right decision? I think it's really important to see what's out there and available in your network. I actually realized, so like, that's again how I came upon you all. I think it's important to see what's out there and who you can resource. I have a little accountability group that I belong to and have had since the beginning of my business. So people that are at different stages of their business, but I would say it's networking, understanding the resources that are out there, and that you don't have to do it alone. Which again was really important for me. And some people, they want to fly solo, which I'm still doing that, but I have like a whole toolbox of resources and support. So I would say, if you don't want to do it alone, not necessarily mean that you have a business partner, but you can have like an extension of your team that's not necessarily on your payroll.
Yes.
So yeah. I think that would be my biggest advice. And there's a lot of great things out there and people. And again, this program, I feel very fortunate that I came across it for so many reasons. But again, the support structure around that. So it's unusual to find that. I mean, but my advice would be really educate yourself about the resources and look for them, seek them out, because they are there.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And for those people listening, I know that you can have these same shifts in your business. Walking away from this conversation, knowing that you can take those steps. So what are those shifts that you want to make in your business? What are those changes that you want to make? Those simples. And this is the thing, it's simple systems, it's tactics that will support you to get your business to where you want to, create you that, personal abundance, but also less stress, more fun in the workplace, and support around you and accountability around you, that's really going to help you to level up to where you want to be. So Janine, thank you so much. I really hope those listening have enjoyed this conversation and walked away believing that they can do the same. If you want to hear more about how Centered Excellence and our Rocket programs can support you with those changes in your business in the way that they have, Janine, then please, I'm going to put, there'll be a download underneath this interview. You can click on there to understand the first steps that Janine took to build her business. So Janine, thank you so much. You have been amazing. Thank you very, very much. And we will see you again soon. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.